And God chose your kind as the object of his love. I was the first in all heaven to bow down before you. My love, my hope for mankind was no less than his. But I have watched you trample that gift. I've watched you kill each other over race and greed, wage war over dust and rubble and the words in old books. And yet in the midst of all this darkness, I see some people who will not be bowed. I see some people who will not give up, even when they know all hope is lost. Some people who realize that being lost is so close to being found.
Happy heresies, and welcome to the desert of the real. Welcome, my son, to the machine and the means to escape it. Welcome to the ability to dream your own dream, and not the ones implanted in you by the mediocre and ignorant, who rule existence after they broke your heart, will, and hope.
Don't worry, number 6. You'll be cured. I'll see to it. No more nightmares. If you have so much as a bad dream, you will come whimpering to tell it to me. Whimpering!
Welcome with kindness and love to Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio, formerly known as Coffee, Cigarettes, and Gnosis, and formerly transmitted in the blood meridian wastelands of atheism. Still broadcast at the virtual Alexandria, but these Blade Runner days through the GodAboveGod.com. You have come here to write your own gospel and live your own myth. And that's what we're doing. Oh, you Gnostics, you lovers of the esoterica, and you Dionysian freethinkers.
Every revolution begins with one small act of courage.
After all, we are veterans of 1,000 psychic wars who have set the controls to the heart of the sun. We are modern-day Tom Sawyers, lie-executing boondock saints, and Torchwood Captain Jacks, voyaging across galaxies of history and imagination.
You're not making any sense, man.
Excuse me, I'm making perfect sense. You're just not keeping up.
We're weary, our souls are lacerated, and we've got stigmata even in our eyes while we shed bloody tears. But we have just begun fighting the good fight, haven't stopped keeping the faith, and will surely finish the race before the soulless servants of Jehovah, those machine men with machine hearts, with machine heads, attempt to permanently confine us in the black iron prison, or cosmic house of the rising sun, or the Goblin King's labyrinth, even if it's cool-ass David Bowie.
Whatever happened to free will?
We actually tried free will before. After taking you from hunting and gathering to the height of the Roman Empire, we stepped back to see how you do on your own. You gave us the Dark Ages for 5 centuries. Until finally we decided we should come back in.
We are legend, and we're raging against the corporation that is heaven for our misplaced childhoods and paradises lost. Even as the carnival called Oath burns with the pain of the needy and mistreated.
Is a world getting progressively worse? Can we not agree on that?
The normal person will ask during the war, how could evil come into the world? We, the Gnostics, ask instead, how could good come into the world? So divided we stand, together we rise. And we shall rise higher than the gods, as the apocalypse of Adam and the book of the great invisible spigot promises those who have taken the red pill and see reality for what it is. A copy of a copy of a copy of the true reality.
We programmed this world so that no one in it could ever learn the truth.
Even the Buddha stated humans had more of a chance for enlightenment than gods or spirits because we understand impermanence so intimately we're willing to dare a journey into eternity and learn its ways. I think this quote by the late and great Robert Anton Wilson describes our unique mindset when society mocks us for not conforming to their capitalistic caste systems and smurf politically correct herd mentality. Cynics regard everybody as equally corrupt. Idealists regard everybody as equally corrupt except themselves. And everyone is an idealist these days, so full of noble ideas but no action, and those serve as the railing to the path of hell, paved with the good intentions of our Starship Trooper politicians and replicant celebrities.
Because I have understanding.
Understanding of what, Master?
Of digital watches. And soon I shall have understanding of videocassette recorders and car telephones. And when I have understanding of them, I shall have understanding of computers. And when I have understanding of computers, I shall be the supreme being.
So if we don't make a stand, my beloved truth seekers, if we don't do for the least of our brothers, then our fate shall be another doom of countless dooms. This is from the Gnostic Gospel, the first book of Eo. The living Jesus answered and said, "May your mind understand through that which I say to you in the course of my discourse, so that you fulfill it and are saved from the archon of this aeon and his persecutions, to which there is no end. But you, my disciples, hasten to receive my word with certainty, so that you know it, in order that the archon of this aeon may not fight with you."
Believe me, the sooner we're off the planet, the better.
And to put it in a modern context, if you're not getting it, because what I said doesn't fit in a fridge magnet, pithy saying calendar, or is longer than the affirmations of your spiritual advisor who happens to drive a Lexus, here is what the rulers of this age want from you, or more like how they want to keep your divine spark contained and packaged. It's from Orwell's 1984. We are not content with negative obedience, nor even with the most abject submission. When finally you surrender to us, it must be of your own free will. We do not destroy the heretic because he resists us. So long as he resists, we never destroy him. We convert him. We capture his inner mind. We reshape him. We burn all evil and all illusion out of him. We bring him over to our side, not in appearance, but genuinely, heart and soul. We make him one of ourselves before we kill him.
What is the Matrix? Control. The Matrix is a computer-generated dream world, built to keep us under control in order to change a human being into this.
No, I don't believe it. It's not possible.
I didn't say it would be easy, Neo. I just said it would be the truth.
I am Abraxas, that terrible solar logos and chief archon as the ancients knew him, who devoured other archons for the frack of it, and who could shatter creation and all its gods with his mere presence. But I come to you in his mortal incarnation of Miguel Connor, broadcasting in the lawful dystopia of Chicago, patiently waiting for the world to begin. I am no guru, no spiritual savant, no leader of any kind. I am just a burnout hack, aging fool on the hill and lunatic on the grass, offering a menu of choices so that you can find your own bliss. But it's up to you to choose the meal, even if your guests around you are all Judas. We are joined by Luke A. Myers to discuss a very third-eye-opening and poignant book. It is entitled Gnostic Visions. The Gnostics recorded surreal, dreamlike, and genius visions in their scripture, from realms beyond matter and spirit, preggers with ultra-divine uber-gods, to the inner cavities of the human soul. As Eric Davis wrote in Nomad Codes, the Gnostic way out is way out. Gnostic texts crackle with a peculiar energy, an almost sci-fi sensibility of alien gods and supramundane universes of light. Though not the first cosmic dualists, the Gnostics may have been the first spiritual off-worlders.
First, there was darkness. Then came the strangers. They were a race as old as time itself. They had mastered the ultimate technology, the ability to alter physical reality by will alone.
Most scholars and theologians have plenty of theories of the why behind their exploratory writings. You know, life sucks, there really are out to get us, conspiracy and paranoia and schizophrenia, praise baby Gnostic Jesus, and Sophia in a sexy nurse costume. Or even worse, from Applejack Gnostics. We are all one, but you need a Tao to lead you. Templars and knocked up Mary Magdalene. Gnosis is anything that makes you happy. Valentinus was an Uncle Tom.
I may sound like a lunatic, but I'm not crazy.
But the how is still an open book. Scholars like James Robinson posit they use visualization. Carl Jung contended they practice meditation. Others have proposed intense prayer, magical rites, sacraments, creative exegesis, or a combination of all of these. But as Luke argues very well in Gnostic Visions, these are but the shell casing or reenactment of the myth in their pursuit of gnosis. The truth is that the Gnostic revelations are closer in topography to primordial shamanistic ecstatic vision quests, mystery school rituals, and Egyptian mystic practices. In our interview, we mine the Gnostic Gospels, especially the Sethian ones, revealing their walkabouts across the multiverse, and perhaps find out how they truly were able to tap into the Pleroma and its aeons.
What happens when a man goes through his own portal?
We'll see.
It's such an honor. I have been to the dark side. I have seen a world that no man should see.
Really, for most people, it was a rather pleasant experience.
Beyond that, Luke's Gnostic Visions is a great bedrock work on how humanity began to expand its consciousness from antediluvian times through Zoroaster and his LSD religion, shooting across the Greco-Roman times until we slam into the Dark Ages.
You can't expect to wield supreme executive power just because some watery tart threw a sword at you.
It's a very nice read, my beloved truth seekers, with plenty of science to balance the hot beef injections of history and anthropology. But enough of my drivel. Luke A. Myers on his book, Gnostic Visions. The Empire Never Ended.
A hero properly is someone who has given his life to something bigger than himself or other than himself.
So in all of these cultures, whatever the costume the hero might be wearing, what is the deed?
Well, there are two types of deed. One is the physical deed, the hero who has performed a war act or a physical act of heroism, saving a life, that's a hero act, giving himself, sacrificing himself to another. And the other kind is the spiritual hero who has learned or found a mode of experiencing the supernormal range of human spiritual life, and then come back and communicated it.
This is the Aeon Byte interview, and with us we have the pleasure of being joined by Luke Myers to discuss his book, Gnostic Visions, Uncovering the Greatest Secret of the Ancient World. How are you doing today, Luke?
I'm doing good.
Thank you very much for joining us again. And without giving too much of the plot away, because we got quite a bit to talk about, tell us about the process of writing and thesis of Gnostic Visions.
I guess really the inspiration for the book came probably maybe a decade before. I had a very powerful religious experience that I discuss at the end of the book. And it led me on a quest to find out the truth, that I found out that there was things about God that the mainstream world wasn't really explaining or didn't really accept. And I started studying shamanism, Gnosticism, very heavily. Eventually had a number of experiences that basically led me to the research and the writing of the book.
And Gnosticism grew within the Hellenistic and fertile religious soil. What are some of the main visionary Greek traditions?
I do talk a little bit about that in the beginning. The beginning of the book is a lot of foundational research for people to kind of understand how the supernatural is contacted and has been contacted since prehistoric times. And then going from that, I started talking about really the first civilization of the West, Western civilization, the Greeks. And there's two real prominent institutions that used visions or used altered states of consciousness as important parts of their religion. The Delphic Oracle, when scientists actually just relatively recently just found that there was in fact hallucinogenic or visionary gases, an ethylene gas, from cracks underground underneath the temple, just as the ancients claimed. And that was responsible for the priestesses going into trance and perceiving the spirit of Apollo. And then the other one was the Eleusinian Mysteries, which was probably the most important religious initiatic ritual of classical times. It affected all the classical philosophers, particularly the Platonic philosophers, Plato, Imbellicus, all those. And for a long time, everyone knew that they were secret, they were powerful, they gave some type of hope for the afterlife, some type of great vision or experience. For a long time, nobody really knew how they were being created. And then a number of researchers, Hoffman and a few others, I think in maybe the 30s or 40s, got together and basically found evidence and culminated their research saying that the kykeon, the sacred drink of the Eleusinian ritual, contained a mixture with ergot, which is basically a psychedelic or visionary fungus that grows on grain at certain times of the year. And that was responsible for the visionary experiences.
Yeah, and your book does a very good job at talking about ancient times throughout classic times on the different traditions. You go from, Zoroastrianism to Egyptian lore and so forth. What I found interesting is that you write that the human brain has really not changed in the last 40,000 years. So basically we still have the same, in our subconscious, we have the same symbols and archetypes, don't we?
Yeah, I think, the beginning part of the book, I talk about the, cave art and some of the evolution of early human culture. And, absolutely, our really mainstream society has a lot to learn from a lot of these ancient traditions, and by trying to conceal them or push them away, they're really doing a very big injustice to knowledge and to a lot of things.
You mentioned that James Robinson believed the Gnostics wrote their texts by practicing visualization, and Carl Jung mentioned meditation as one of their tools, and you give a few more examples. Yet you deny these claims, Luke. Why so?
I'm glad you said that, because I've looked around the Gnostic community quite a bit, and meditation seems to be a very big avenue that everyone's gearing towards. It's very mainstream. It's very safe. But the fact of the matter is, those experiences while meditation is great, they do not create the same experiences that the Gnostics portray, the Sethian Gnostics and the Hermetic tradition. Now, the Hermetic tradition, the Egyptians, meditation was known about by the Egyptians. People know that. But when the Hermetic texts describe a cup, and that, angels came down and gave the cup to mankind, drinking the cup or taking the cup receives the gnosis and knowledge of God and all visions of things divine. I mean, it's telling you that there's a visionary cup that is providing this gnosis to the Hermetic initiates. And the visions that are experienced by the Hermetic priests and the Hermetic books, they're the same type of Gnostics experiences that you find in the Nag Hammadi, the Sethian Gnostics. And those type of experiences where you're traveling to higher dimensional realms and you're encountering these beings and things like that, you can't get that same type of experience, especially with the type of gnosis and the type of things that they describe and the way they deal with meditation. And the other point is if you read the Gospel of the Egyptians, it tells you a lot about Sethian Gnostic baptism rituals. And they were active group events, baptisms. And there's nowhere in there that there's any meditation going on. There's no people sitting around or anything like that. So I think that says a lot.
So you think maybe just scholars are sort of grasping at straws, trying to figure out why, the Gnostics or the Jews or the Christians or Muhammad had these visions?
Well, I just think that in the case of the Gnostics, the earlier theories, a lot of people said, the people who put those theories out didn't know about visionary plants, and they weren't well educated in how visions are produced. I mean, look, there's only a very limited number of ways that those type of experiences can be created. And each type of way, like let's say fasting or meditation or shamanic drumming or say like a sensory deprivation type of experience, they all have unique characteristics. You have to have a certain environment, certain preparation, and the experiences themselves are different. Meditation experiences are very different from someone who's having an experience with mushrooms, or mushrooms are very different from, say, ayahuasca or something of that nature. So by having an understanding of how these experiences affect the mind, affect the body, you can say, okay, well, these people are having visions. What were the visions most like? What were the activities surrounding the creation of the visions? And you quickly get a very short list of possibilities. And I think that the people who created the theories previously just didn't have a full understanding of that.
And before we get into the how the Gnostics got their visions specifically, could you tell us about some of the rituals and sacraments, I guess you call the outer mysteries,
in my book, I primarily focus on the visionary books, because I wanted to find out who was having the visions and how they were being created. And there's some Gnostic groups that didn't have visions. The Mandaeans or Mandaeans is a perfect example. They have, they follow John the Baptist as their last great prophet. They're originating from Mesopotamia, and they're very, very old and ancient. Their books are filled with visionary types of religious imagery, but they don't practice any visionary rituals, and there's no evidence in their writing that they conduct them. So does that mean that they never did? We don't really know. But it's very interesting when you look at the older Gnostic texts, the ones preceding the modern era, the ones from the Nag Hammadi, ones from Egypt in particular, the rites and rituals bear a lot of similarity. But almost all of the experiences from a lot of the visionary cults or the visionary Gnostic groups in the Egyptian area are the ones that are the most visionary and the ones that usually describe some type of ritual and then some type of mystical or visionary experience, which was the keystone of the initiation. And the Valentinians, they were more Christian and more later. And I think they've got a lot of their traditions and things from the older Sethian Gnostics. And I think Jesus was involved in that. It shows you that the wellspring from where Jesus came from. And I think that makes you appreciate Jesus and Christianity a lot deeper by having that kind of information.
And what would you say was the 5 seals ritual that a lot of scholars are still debating about?
It's very similar to the Christian one, but the final seal it appears to be similar with the Valentinian tradition and the Sethian Gnostic tradition, that there was a 5th seal or 5th step, and which was the visionary experience, the stage that brought on initiation, if you will. And it's almost as if the modern Catholic Church took the baptism ritual, extracted the visionary element from it, extracted the full water immersion. You have this container of ritual devoid of its original connection to experiencing divine reality or alternate dimensional type of a thing. And I think that's what went down in the fight for orthodoxy. It's a little too bad that some more didn't survive. And for it's interesting how the whole thing developed and shook out. And one of the things that's always kind of bummed me out a little bit is that the Gnostics, they were so secretive. It was a secret tradition, and that there wasn't more written down saying, this is how we create these visions. I mean, just to get the rituals, you have to take pieces from different books. You basically organize, these are Sethian, these are Valentinian, and piece them together. And I had to go through a number of research papers, scholars, and piecing together all their different work on trying to put together the different rituals, because there's not one book that, like, say, the Gospel of Egyptians, it says a lot of ritual activity, but it leaves a lot of stuff out. You're like, well, what happened? Or it's not very descriptive. Like, they weren't trying to document anything like we are now. It wasn't quite like that. So, there's a lot of mystery that you have to kind of piece together. And I think that's kind of why it's taken so long and it's been so slow, really kind of digging into Gnosticism all these years since we've really found the library in Egypt to get to the place where we are now.
Would you say that the Valentinian bridal chamber is equal to the last seal, the apex of the ritual?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. There's one guy who came out with a theory saying that he thought the bridal chamber was some type of sexual rite. And I think everyone who knows anything about Gnosticism knows that it most likely was not any type of physical ecstasy. And if you read what Philip or any of the Valentinian Gnostics said, it's clearly an experience of the divine, and it's basically like a near-death experience. You see the light, You see luminous beings, angels. You ascend into higher or lower hierarchical realms. You know, they actually do talk about cups being drank, and you know, baptism. And in the later parts of the book, when I talk about the decline of Gnosticism and, you know, early Christian history, I actually uncovered quite a bit of interesting evidence and research that had been done by other scholars that actually showed that the visionary rites that you see in the Valentinian tradition were being extracted out of Christianity, and that as Christianity was dividing from the west to the east, basically the Gnostics in Egypt got really heavily persecuted, and you can see it within the literature that they were replacing these visionary rites with non-visionary rites. And there's hard evidence that these things were going on, and that they were buried, and they've basically been, you know, buried for freaking, you know, 2,000 years. So, you know, that's kind of why I've personally been on a mission to try to share this with people so they can have this understanding and try to bring out this knowledge that's been, you know, hidden for so long.
And Luke, now to the meat of the matter. According to your research, how did the Gnostic sects gain their amazing visions and insights? In other words, what were they taking?
The first clue that got me on the path was, if you compare Gnostic visions, the thing that they're most similar to is near-death experiences, visions of light, entering dimensional heavenly realms, various, you know, things. And the brain, a lot of people don't know, but when somebody is having a near-death experience, the experience is created by a specific visionary psychedelic neurotransmitter called DMT, dimethyltryptamine. And this compound exists naturally within all of our brains. It's within all mammalian brains, mice, deer, all mammals have it. And the interesting thing is it's also in nature, particularly in plants. And for some reason that we have no explanation for, certain plants throughout the world have no reason to create DMT, but they do, and in relatively high amounts. Now, if you took this, say a visionary bush, this bush that contains this neurotransmitter, and you ate it, it would do nothing, because your gut has a compound that denatures this DMT. It breaks it down before it can reach the blood-brain barrier. But if you take another plant, there's another plant that contains a compound called ayahuasca. And this vine, ayahuasca comes from the Amazon, will allow the DMT, when consumed, to reveal its effects, to pass into the blood-brain barrier. Well, natives, Indians in the Amazon area, thousands or hundreds of years ago, found these plants somehow, mixed them together, and created a visionary medical drink called ayahuasca. I started exploring ayahuasca very heavily and came to realize that it was the exact same experiences that the Gnostics were talking about. And I basically needed to prove it to the world. I needed to prove how and what evidence there was that this was true. And the first piece of evidence is that the plants, to create these visions, they grow in the Middle East. There's a plant called Punjum Hamala, and it was used as a medicine, a very important medicine in ancient Iran and ancient Persia and Mesopotamia. And I found texts as I was studying the Mandaeans that they have very old texts that are Mesopotamian origin, that have been passed down in their group for a very long time, that describe this plant, and they venerate it as a holy medicine, as a great power. And it shows direct evidence that one of the two plants necessary for creating this visionary mixture were being used by an ancient Gnostic group. And then, of course, the visionary component that has this DMT that I'm talking about, that also grows very prevalently in the Middle East in certain types of acacia trees. And as you may or may not know, the acacia tree is very sacred in the Middle East. A lot of the Egyptians, the Jews, Islam, a lot of pre-Islamic deities venerated the acacia tree. And for a long time, nobody really knew why. And then they discovered that it had DMT in the leaf tissue. And then a lot of speculation started getting brought up, but there was no real evidence until you really look into these two plants, how they're being used, and then right around the same time that these plants are really getting a lot of heavy use, you have the Gnostic books start coming out with visions that are exactly like the effects that these plants produce.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. You point out in your book that the acacia tree is also one of the symbols of the Freemasons. That made me go,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there was any kind of conspiracy there, but I think the Freemasons do have some ancient knowledge that's been passed down, and I think that is interesting.
And Luke, what are some of the parallels between the visions of the Gnostics and the ayahuasca experience? You mentioned near death. What are some of the other ones?
Wow, that's a great question. So basically, pretty much everything. The Gnostics, the Sophia Gnostics, and the Valentinian Gnostics were vegetarians, and the MAO inhibitors that allow the DMT to work in the body, you can't have meat. If you have meat, it will give you a lot of pain in your gut. It'll be very uncomfortable, and you have to fast from meat for at least 3 days before you take ayahuasca. When you go to the Amazon, they have special diets that you take, and they're all vegetarian. And they say that it's a design by the brew or God or whatever. And that's the first thing. And the second thing I would say is gnosis. The Gnostics were Gnostics because they venerated the Gnostic experience of initiation, gnosis, knowledge. When you take ayahuasca, and the way I took it, and in a lot of ways you can take it down in South America, it's in complete darkness. There's no light around, because when you're going into this space, the sensory input from the eyes, it doesn't allow for the visions as well. And if you're on a really strong dose, you can't. The two, they cross. The information crosses and it messes with you. And when you're in complete darkness, you don't have that input coming in. It's just the visions. Your mind is perfectly clear and aware, and then you begin to be shown things. It's almost like ayahuasca comes and holds your hand and shows you things about yourself, about the universe. And there's a lot going on. The mind is a very complex thing. There's elements of your mind. There's elements of the universe and higher spiritual things coming in. And then there's God. And I like to say that, or think that God, the mind of God is in the brew, and that it will, and a lot of the things that happen, the general theme, it's like it's trying to teach you something, work out problems that you've had in your life, cleanse you, heal you, illuminate you, give you knowledge. And knowledge is a very big theme of the brew. And it's just like it is with the Gnostics. Their rituals gave them what I'm talking about, this knowledge and these experiences. And then I would say some of the more detailed elements of the visions, like encountering beings, angelic beings of light. I've encountered various strange, from beautiful to strange, a whole dimension of, it's almost like there's no real words in English to describe a lot of these things, but there's levels, and like they, as you ascend into these different levels, they are inhabited by various beings, and particularly when you enter the celestial regions, luminous beings that some are not so interested in you. Some, seem like they're almost very alien, and they just notice that you're there. They come and look at you, or they stand, maybe stay off off in the distance, and then some might come closer. Really, everyone's experience is different. It takes a while even to maybe meet some of these beings because it's an evolutionary process, a process of growing with the brew. But my wife, when we went down to the Amazon for the first time, I wanted to go down there because I wanted her to, she had never met God before, have an experience. And we were with a very good healer, and he was a very good singer. They sing healing songs. And basically what happened is we had similar experiences. We entered this deep space of darkness, but then the darkness becomes a space, a deepness. And then in my experience, there was these little luminous kind of, I don't know, jellyfish is the right word, but kind of these luminous beings off, kind of spirits, something kind of flying off in the distance. They never came too close to me. And then I noticed a pure light in the distance. I'd seen the light before, been wrapped in it, and it's a pure consciousness. It's pure thought. It's God itself. And I didn't have a lot of the experiences of Gnosis I had at personal times by myself, but my wife did. And she was traveling through these tunnels of light, or geometric tunnels. And she was kind of feeling lost, like where to go in the tunnels. And then one of the tunnels kind of was opened up. And at the corridor, the end of this tunnel, it was the light of God as pure consciousness, pure thought. And that's exactly what God is, disembodied consciousness of all things in the universe, plants, animals, bacteria, aliens, everything. Everything that has a consciousness has its root in this light, this hyperdimensional, light. And it's kind of like, when I try to explain this to people, it's kind of like the cells in your body. Each of the cells in your body is alive. It performs a task, and it has an intelligence. They move, they fight bacteria, infection, they move oxygen around, they do all these things. And yet, when they're in your body, they somehow interconnect, and you have become an awareness. You have an awareness. You may not so be aware of the cells in your body that being alive and moving, but for some miraculous reason, you have a consciousness under your own. And that's what I feel God is. All living things in the entire universe, our root of our consciousness comes from this source, and that source is God. And these experiences that the Gnostics had, the experiences that can be provided through ayahuasca and DMT, near-death experiences, they allow you to enter that space. And ayahuasca in particular, basically not only opens that door, but it teaches you and it shows you things and it heals you. And that, to me, is the greatest miracle of the whole thing. And then just the experience itself is remarkable. I mean, some of the thoughts and the concepts that you sense or become aware of, it's hard to share with people who have never experienced it, because it's almost like you're going to sound crazy or it's science fiction. Like I personally, after doing ayahuasca, I have a greater understanding for, earth, plants, the intelligence of plants, God, religion, and some of the experiences I've had have been really strange. And I, just these fractal orbs of light, and they're like the way they communicate, and a lot of things happen in pure thought. Like when you enter the light, there's no sound, just thought, and the thought comes in without any words, and it communicates with you. And that's actually something else about the Gnostics, is there's places in the Gnostic books, I think the Book of Marcinus and a few others, where it describes meeting God, but the event, the communication that took place in silence, meaning that there was a transfer of thought, and not a transfer of words. Basically, their way of saying what we would call like telepathy or something now. So there's a lot of parallels.
What about, Luke, the idea of Gnostic dualism? These experiences just don't show you the light, but they also show you the darkness, don't they?
That's true. That is definitely possible. I've drank a lot, and I would say that those are very limited experiences, but they do and can happen. A lot of times they can be purgative, but any time a shadowy force or a lower, they're always, when you feel their energy, these malicious forces, and they are malicious, they are lower. And that's the other thing, is the Gnostics describe these creatures as jealous of the higher states that mankind had reached. When I started drinking ayahuasca, I found it amazingly interesting, because when I started having some experiences where I started meeting some malicious forces, it can be very terrifying. I had one particularly very terrifying experience I didn't talk about in the book, and you get this feeling that these creatures are primitive. They're shadowy, and in my particular case, you sense a lot of energies. You perceive it some way, and they felt, I want to say, is like a reptilian feeling. Is kind of how I felt when I encountered them. And in this one particular case, I was actually actually happened after a very good mystical experience that I was having, and I was coming out of it, and I was almost like I was descending back down to earth after like kind of traveling through this tunnel of light. All of a sudden, this shadowy danger appears, and I had kind of seen this thing once before, and it was, when it fears, it alarms you. You get scared, and it's really hard to explain how it happens. It's a very psychic or mental kind of a thing going on. The first time it happened, I told it to go away, and it did. And I've talked to people about this, and some people have had these types of experiences, and they put out feelings of love and light and God and things about positive. So yeah, basically, then it just went away. And so it went away, and I felt like I overcame it. It was afraid of the emotion or the energy or something. But most of the time, they hardly ever, really hardly ever see them. And there was another time this is actually when I was down in Peru, and I had to, because ayahuasca is purgative, I had to go to the bathroom, and I had to relieve myself. I have another one of these shadowy creatures come out, and I commanded it out. I said, you are not invited here. Then I basically sat on the toilet, relieved myself, and then it was like emerging out of my consciousness, and as I was relieving myself, it like purged out of my mind or my soul or something. So experiences like that can happen too. But yeah, as far as dualism goes, the Gnostics, did encounter both good beings and bad beings, and that same type of thing is encountered under ayahuasca. And you can't necessarily see that type of activity on meditation or in group activity necessarily. So it's powerful.
And Luke, what advice would you give to somebody who might be seeking this visionary experiencing? Obviously, the Nag Hammadi library is the map, it's not the actual territory. What advice would you have for them? In my experience, the advice is do it with a lot of people and do it with some elder or somebody who has experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Down in Peru and Brazil, there's a lot of places to get access to it. I went to Iquitos, Peru. There's a very strong shamanic tradition there. A lot of conferences that people will put on. You can stay down in Iquitos, and they'll have a shamanic conference for a week. They teach you all about Amazon healing, the plants they use. You drink ayahuasca. Because you do have to remember that ayahuasca is fundamentally a medical purgative used by jungle societies as a medicine. A lot of times they'll mix in other things like degato, which is a vine that stimulates the immune system. Very, very strong in doing that. And they'll mix that in, and if you're sick, it'll help heal you and purge you of parasites or whatever you might have, and particularly in a more primitive society, it's very good. But it comes with an added benefit. It comes with this spiritual type of benefit. If people are really into Gnosticism and it's a passion of yours, you really like it, you really are interested in it, then if you really want to understand, truly understand the experiences that the Gnostics had, then by studying this plant and getting into a ritual and becoming initiated, you will realize, you will go through initiation, you will realize that the spiritual dimension is real. And it's not what everybody thinks it is. It's very hard to explain. You know, the experience, as I was saying before, it's part God kind of walking you through things and showing you things and teaching you things. And then it's part your own mind and of, you know, things kind of going on or being revealed or something. And then there's this extra dimensional element. And sometimes if the brew is really strong, the experience can be very fast, very powerful. But a lot of the places down in Peru or Brazil where you'll drink it, there'll be in a group context. The shaman will be doing his healing ritual, where they sing, they burn tobacco, they shake particular types of leaves to cleanse your energy or your aura. Some traditions also do energy, laying on of hands, because you can sense energy very well. That exists down there. And, I would say, just kind of look into it more and do it somewhere where it's legal, in some type of legal construct, whether it's some type of church or some type of place, down in South America or Peru, where it's perfectly legal in an indigenous context. But, I think that I would be very happy the day that more of Gnosticism incorporates this. Because to me, this brew is the greatest secret of the ancient world. This was the secret of the Gnostic visionary rites. Now, not all the Gnostics did this, or not all the Gnostics have visions. But the ones that did, particularly around Egypt, this was how they were created, and the plants were available, and you can read my book and judge for yourself. But if somebody is open-minded to these type of experiences, they can be very rewarding, very healing, and very enlightening. And there's also other ways to experience similar types of things that aren't, you're not consuming any type of thing. I mean, you have, flotation tanks or sensory deprivation tanks, which can provide a similar type of experience. I don't know how much the DMT is active in those events. I have read some literature that they suspect that some type of DMT-type mechanism is responsible for dreaming in some fashion. And when you go into a sleep deprivation tank, it puts you into the theta state, the same type of state that you get in dreaming or in shamanic drumming, where it allows you to see visions. I've never been in the deprivation tank before, but I do know people who have, and they would say that it's probably the closest thing that you can get to the type of ayahuasca type experience without actually drinking ayahuasca. So that's another avenue for people to explore if they're interested. There's places in America where you can do that. In a lot of major cities, they have that. There's that avenue, but you definitely want to be safe. It's not a toy. You don't take it to get high. It's nothing like that. It's not addictive. It's pretty much basically a plant-based medicine that has this neurotransmitter in it with another plant that has purgative properties and some other maybe compounds that might affect your immune system or boost your immune system. And when you're done taking it, you feel fine. You actually feel quite healthy because it really does cleanse you, and it's pretty therapeutic. I think the more people talk about this, the less it becomes taboo. The more, as a society, I think we can kind of evolve. I do personally believe that that this direction that we're going towards God and becoming a greater awareness of nature's intelligence and God's spirit through the whole thing is where we're headed. Our mainstream society right now is pretty screwed up, lost, primitive. We might have a lot of technology and a lot of materialism, but, we're just as messed up as we were 2,000 years ago. And there's a lot of progressive people around, you and all sorts of people that are helping, our society to move forward. And, this is a tool that is helping to do that.
That's very well said, and I certainly agree with you 100%, Luke. But I think that's all the time we have today. I'd like to thank you very much for coming on Aeon Byte and discussing your new book, Gnostic Visions.
Thank you.
And there you have it, my beloved truth seekers. Luke A. Myers on the how the Gnostics got their visions. From his new book, you got it, Gnostic Visions. Connecting DMT stimulation with the Gnostic worldview at the depth Luke does hasn't been done before. But then again, I don't envision Marvin Meyer or James Robinson or Elaine Pagels going to the Amazons to hang out with nude natives in order to find the missing passages of the Gospel of Mary. Know what I mean? And I'm sure many of you will disagree, since Entheogens is still a touchy subject in a country where we can't even legalize marijuana in California. But the dialogue should be there, my beloved truth seekers. At the very least. I do know personally that when I first started reading the Nag Hammadi library, I couldn't truly get it. It felt familiar, it felt like home, and it felt right. But there was no real aha moments. Then I went to Portugal for the summer. I read a lot of Philip K. Dick and participated in a few ayahuasca rituals. And all of a sudden, I understood, my beloved truth seekers. I had gnosis. I took a journey to those universes of light with supramundane beings. In fact, I beheld Abraxas for the first time, what he truly was, and to this day, I think about it every day. But that was my journey. As always, your mileage may vary, and DMT can be ignited in other ways, as Luke spoke about. And either way, Gnostic Visions is a good book worth having in your reading basket next to your toilet, where men actually have the ability to concentrate and pay attention. For companion shows, I recommend Aeon Byte number 108, Cannabis and Ancient Religion, with Chris Bennett. Aeon Byte number 125, Shamanism and Holy Hallucinogens, with Andrew Rudashit. And Aeon Byte number 31, Entheogens, with again Andrew Rudashit and Jan Irving. In fact, our Altered State section has lots of Cheech and Chong stuff. And in our Schrodinger's Diary section in the player, Anthony P. gives a very good scientific and mystic talk about DMT in the Pleroma or 0-point field wave entry. In the end, it's up to you. Divided we stand, together we rise, as I always say. We shall take together to the battlefield of the truth seeker warrior, but each one of us with our own swords of truth and armor of wisdom, and face the hordes of heaven and hell as they come barreling down for our divine sparks. Come on, try Jehovah and your angelic mafia. We may be the last in line, as Dio sang, but Jesus said we shall be the first.